The night swallowed the road whole. I wrestled the wheel, the downpour a relentless assault on my windshield, blurring the world into a watery mess. Midnight had long passed, and my wipers fought a losing battle against the deluge. Every muscle screamed from a brutal shift at the warehouse. All I craved was the quiet of my home, a cold beer and oblivion. Then, through the shimmering curtain of rain, a shape emerged, a man. He trudged along the muddy shoulder, utterly drenched, each footfall a monumental effort in the churning mire. My foot lifted from the gas, slowing the car without conscious thought. My headlights impaled him in the storm's fury. His clothes were rags caked in grime, a torn jacket, jeans stiff with weeks of dirt. A primal urge screamed at me to drive on, to ignore the chilling tales of late-night Good Samaritans gone wrong. But then I saw his face. A raw, shattered mask that spoke of unspeakable torment, a man utterly spent, beyond caring about appearances. That look froze my hand on the wheel. I lowered the window just a crack. "Hey, need a lift?" He halted, turning with agonizing slowness. His voice, a gravelly whisper, barely cut through the rain. "If you're going downtown, I'd appreciate it." I gave a quick nod toward the empty passenger seat. He slid in, a silent shadow. A foul odor instantly filled the car, damp fabric, stale earth, and a faint, coppery tang like old blood or rusted iron. He kept his gaze fixed on the blurred world outside, the rain streaking the window like tears. "Rough night to be out," I offered, trying to break the heavy silence. "Nothing." After a strained moment, I tried again. "Hungry, I've got food at my place, can whip something up." Slowly, he shifted his head. His eyes, glazed and distant, held a terrible emptiness. "Yes, please, it's been days since I ate." The word struck me with an unexpected force. I knew that feeling, that gnawing desperation, the world passing you by. "All right," I said, my decision made. "My house is just ahead. We'll get you fed and you can crash on the couch." He gave another silent nod. Pulling into my driveway, I gestured him inside. "Come on in. I'll grab some towels and get food started." He entered, leaving a trail of water across my entryway. I told him to take a seat at the kitchen table while I scanned the fridge. Leftover chicken, a loaf of bread, a couple of beers, enough to scrape by. As I began heating the food, I tried to fill the silence. "So what's your name?" I asked, popping open a beer. A long, agonizing pause. "Caleb," he finally rasped. "Nice to meet you, Caleb." "I'm Logan." He simply nodded, his gaze glued to the floor. Each word he uttered seemed torn from him. "You from around here?" I pressed. Used to be." My question hung unanswered. He remained hunched, silent, the rainwater steadily pooling from his sleeves onto my clean floor. I shook my head, turning back to the stove. "You're a quiet one, aren't you?" When I glanced over my shoulder a moment later, the chair was empty. My heart gave a jolt. I checked the living room, the hall, even the bathroom. Maybe he'd slipped outside, but the storm still raged and the porch was utterly bare. Not a single footprint disturbed the wet wood. A cold knot tightened in my chest, then I saw it. The basement door, usually sealed shut, stood ajar, always locked, always. I stared, my pulse beginning to hammer against my ribs. "Hey man," I called out, forcing my voice to sound level. "The basement's off limits. You can't go down there." No answer, only the faint, chilling drip of water from the darkness below. I snatched the flashlight from the counter, its beam a weak comfort, and descended, one slow, deliberate step at a time. The air grew heavy and cold, thick with the smell of damp earth and disuse. Halfway down, I froze. He was there, motionless in the center of the room, his back to me, staring at the unseen floor. My voice, strained, called his name. He remained unmoving. "What in hell are you doing down here? You can't just..." Then, a chilling whisper tore through the silence. "It was you." He spun around, and the sight of his face froze the blood in my veins. His eyes, no longer vacant, blazed with a terrifying fury. His hand plunged into his jacket, emerging with a silver necklace, a small heart pendant glinting as it swung. "I found this right here," he hissed, his voice raw with a terrible wrath. It was hers, my wife's. A cold dread seized my gut. "Listen, I don't know what you're imagining. You stole her from me," he shrieked, his voice shattering. "I hunted for you for months, desperate. I never thought I'd see you again." A glint of steel. "He'd drawn a knife." "Caleb, drop it," I yelled, hands raised in frantic surrender. "You're making a terrible mistake." The blade flashed, a whisper of cold air passed my ear as it ripped my jacket sleeve, missing my throat by a hair's breadth. I reeled backward, slamming into the wall, my flashlight clattering to the concrete, its beams spinning wildly. He lunged again, a guttural scream tearing from his throat. "You murdered her." I stumbled, my hand instinctively finding the cold grip at my hip. I drew my handgun and fired. The shot roared, deafening in the confined space. Caleb crumpled, a ragged gasp escaping him as blood blossomed dark on his shirt. I stood, chest heaving, my gaze locked on his struggling form. His fingers twitched, a desperate reach for the fallen blade. I fired again. Then, silence, only the drumming rain against the windows above. My heart hammered a frantic rhythm against my ribs, gun still raised for what felt like an eternity. Slowly, I lowered it. My eyes fell on the necklace, glinting near his outstretched hand. I picked it up. The heart pendant was split, a jagged crack running down its center. "You shouldn't have come here, man," I muttered, the words barely a breath. I turned my back, climbed the creaking stairs, and pulled the basement door shut, sealing away the horror. I sank into a chair at the kitchen table, my own ghostly reflection staring back from the dark window pane. My hands shook, not with terror, but with a colder tremor, a familiar ghost from years past. This wasn't a new horror for me. Years ago, I ran with a crew, just small-time break-ins, quick scores. But one night, it all went wrong. A woman woke up, the situation spiraled out of control, and I did what I felt I had to do. I never meant for her to die, but she did. I fled that town, shed my old name, started fresh. I truly believed I'd buried that life forever, but the past is a stubborn thing. It never stays buried, it always claws its way back, especially on nights like these. I poured a stiff drink, desperate to steady my trembling hands. "More careful next time," I whispered to the empty room. The clock on the wall read 2:47 a.m. Outside, the rain drummed on, a relentless, mournful sound. And from the darkness below, beneath the groan of ancient wood and the drip of leaking pipes, I swore I heard it, a faint, chilling whisper. A woman's voice. That night, her night, was seared into my memory forever. "My name is Hannah. I'm 19 now, but this all began when I was 17, a time when I mistakenly believed I understood everything. I lived in Crestview, a sleepy Illinois town, mostly quiet, save for the occasional brawl outside the local bar or teenagers tearing down the main road. It wasn't a hotbed of crime, but it certainly wasn't some idyllic paradise either. That evening, I'd met my best friend, Lena, at a diner on Burwood Street. It was the tail end of summer, that peculiar period when the air begins to chill but still carries the scent of hot asphalt and backyard grills. We spent hours dissecting college plans, boys, and all the trivial dramas of being a teenager. Around 10:30, we finally settled the check, shared the last of the fries, and parted ways. Lena's brother arrived to drive her home. My place was only a 15-minute walk, and I thought, what harm could possibly come to me in this quiet little town? As I set off, my belly full and a tune on my lips, the streetlights cast a sickly yellow glow. Crickets chirped so loudly they swallowed my own thoughts. I burrowed my hands into my hoodie pockets, feeling the crisp wind bite through the thin fabric. Somewhere between the gas station and the worn-down laundromat, a faint, damp scent reached me, the unmistakable smell of coming rain. The rain hadn't begun, but the air thrummed with its imminent arrival. I quickened my pace, my mind adrift. My focus wasn't on my phone or music, but on something utterly trivial. I lifted my arm, sniffing disdainfully. Ugh, I grumbled, my nose crinkling. Way to go, Hannah, so elegant. In that precise instant, I collided with someone. Whoa, my apologies, I exclaimed, staggering backward. The girl I'd crashed into whirled, clutching her bag tight. She seemed a few years my senior, perhaps 20 or 21. Her black hair, streaked with crimson, was a wild tangle, obscuring one eye. "Oh, no, it's fine," she mumbled swiftly, her speech a little thick. "Completely my fault, I wasn't looking." Her smile was hazy, and she blinked as if the streetlight's glare was too harsh. Immediately I caught the sharp, unmistakable scent of alcohol. "Are you absolutely all right?" I asked. She nodded, sweeping her hair from her face. "Yeah, I'm fine." You're truly beautiful, do you know that?" A flush crept up my cheeks. Thanks." "No, genuinely," she insisted, her voice soft yet wavering. "That outfit suits you so well." "I adore the jeans and the shoes." I glanced down at my plain jeans and worn sneakers, utterly unremarkable. She was definitely tipsy. I gave an uneasy chuckle. "Well, thank you, but it's really nothing special." She extended her hand. "I'm Riley." "Hannah," I replied, shaking it. Her grip, surprisingly strong despite her inebriation, startled me. Her smile widened. "Do you live nearby?" "Yes, about a mile from here." "That's wild. I'm over near Elm Street, not far at all." A brief silence settled, broken only by the rustle of wind through the trees and the faint drone of distant cars. Then she proposed, "Wanna hang out? I've got wine coolers at my place. We could just chill, chat, whatever." I paused, torn. Politeness warred with my reluctance to go drinking with a stranger at 11 o'clock at night. "Perhaps another time," I said, choosing my words carefully. "I really need to get home. My mom's probably worried." Riley tilted her head, her brow furrowed in thought. "Fair enough," she conceded at last. "But you seem cool, Hannah. I'd genuinely like to hang out sometime. Do you have your phone?" I nodded, and we quickly swapped numbers. I recall her smile. It wasn't sinister or false, just weary. Then, in a single, terrifying second, everything shattered. From the corner of my eye, I caught a flicker of motion behind her. For a split second, I dismissed it as a shadow, a trick of the dim streetlight. But it wasn't. A man emerged from the gap between two parked cars. He was tall, powerfully built like a laborer, shrouded in a dark hoodie with the hood pulled low. His strides were swift, purposeful. Before my mind could even register the threat, he lunged. "Riley, watch out!" I shrieked. She spun, bewildered, then let out a piercing scream. The man seized her shoulder, jerking her violently closer. In that same horrifying instant, I saw a metallic gleam beneath the light. He plunged it into her arm, again and again. The sickening sound of flesh tearing mingled with her desperate screams. I stood paralyzed for a second, too utterly shocked to react. The air grew heavy with the wet, horrifying sound of blood splattering the pavement. When he raised his arm for another strike, I finally broke free of my trance. "Hey!" I screamed, launching myself at him from behind. The knife clattered, skittering into the darkness. He grunted, far stronger than I'd anticipated, trying to throw me off, but pure adrenaline fueled me like a wild beast. I struck him once, then again, feeling the sickening crunch of his nose beneath my fist. He snarled something unintelligible, but when I snatched the knife and flung it far into the street, he paused his struggle long enough for me to deliver a brutal kick to his ribs. "Run!" I shrieked at Riley. She was clutching her injured arm, blood gushing between her fingers, her eyes wide and unfocused with terror. "Yes, you can." I grabbed her uninjured hand and hauled her to her feet. Miraculously, she began to run. We sprinted down the street, both gasping for breath, both reeling in shock. Every shadow, every whisper of the wind behind us screamed that he was pursuing. I didn't dare stop until the warm, welcoming glow of my house appeared in the distance. I burst through the front door, my voice hoarse. "Mom, call 911. My parents rushed from the living room, my mother's eyes widening in horror at the sight of Riley. Blood was smeared down her arm, staining our clean hardwood floor with dark, wet drops. "Oh my God," Mom gasped, snatching a towel and pressing it firmly against the gaping wound. "He attacked her," I gasped, my chest heaving. "Near Birchwood with a knife." My father didn't need to hear another word. He grabbed the phone, already dialing 911 while I fought to keep Riley conscious. She was ghostly pale, shivering uncontrollably, yet managed to whisper, "He just appeared." The ambulance siren wailed in the distance, growing louder, and soon red and blue lights pulsed through our windows, staining the room with their frantic glow. I stood rigid, trembling, forcing air into my lungs as they carefully lifted her onto the stretcher. An officer, an older man with eyes that had seen too much, approached me. "Birchwood Street, you said?" "Yes," I choked out, my voice raw, close to the laundromat. They found him there swiftly, collapsed and bleeding, the knife lying beside him like a silent, damning admission. Riley lived. She'd bled profusely, but the doctors called her recovery a miracle. A few days later, I found her in the hospital, frail but undeniably breathing. Her eyes, when they met mine, brimmed with tears. "I never got to thank you," she whispered, her voice weak. "No need," I replied, my own throat tight. "Just focus on healing." She offered a fragile nod, a ghost of a smile touching her lips. "You saved me?" "Seriously," I insisted. "I was an idiot, stumbling around drunk like that. We both dodged a bullet." She reached for my hand, her grip surprisingly firm. "When I get out of here, I'm signing up for self-defense. You're coming with me, right?" A shaky laugh escaped me, a knot of emotion in my chest. "Absolutely." But this time, no wine coolers involved. 2 years have crawled by since that terrifying night, yet Birchwood Street still calls to me. They've resurfaced the asphalt, installed brighter lamps, but in my mind's eye, I still see the phantom stains on the pavement, dark and indelible. Riley and I honored our vow. We both immersed ourselves in martial arts, and she now playfully claims she's the superior fighter. But each time I trek home after dark, my keys are clutched tight between my fingers, my gaze sweeping every shadow. Because a town's quiet facade can hide anything. Monsters don't come with flashing signs. Sometimes they simply step out from the darkness between two parked cars. I was only 15 when the genuine smile vanished from my mother's face. It wasn't an abrupt change. It was a slow, insidious fade, like a dripping faucet that you eventually stop hearing until the silence itself becomes deafening. We lived then in a modest rental, tucked away from the main road in a sleepy Indiana town. It was nothing grand, faded blue siding, a porch that sagged wearily, and a yard choked with weeds. Yet my mom once filled it with warmth. She'd light candles, play soft music, hum as she folded clothes. All of that died when he arrived. His name was Randy. Even now, the sound of it leaves a bitter taste. He first appeared when I was 5, a fleeting presence in our lives. My parents were separating then, and Randy was simply a coworker my mom had met. He possessed an effortless charm, a magnetic pull. That smooth southern drawl, the courteous nods, a smile that lingered just long enough to feel sincere. But even as a child, I instinctively recoiled from him. There was a glint in his eyes, a subtle wrongness that chilled me. Mom dismissed it, saying I was just being a kid. "You don't know him like I do," she'd often say. A part of me still screams for her to have listened. At 10, we fled south to Florida, seeking refuge with my grandparents. For a time, life softened. The constant tension faded, replaced by the quiet rhythm of my mom working at the diner and my little sister, Leia, beginning school. But Randy, a persistent shadow, remained. He'd comment on old Facebook photos, his words like a creepy echo, "You girls look beautiful. Tell your mom I said hi." I found it deeply unsettling, but Mom brushed it off as mere politeness. A few years spun by. I was 14 when she dropped the bombshell. He was back. "I think he's changed," she murmured, stirring her coffee, her voice betraying a faint tremor. "He quit drinking. He's genuinely trying now." I remained silent, but a cold knot tightened in my gut. It was that familiar, sickening premonition, the calm before a storm you know is coming, powerless to stop it. Months later, we were uprooted again, transplanted north to a tiny town in Ohio. Randy, a relentless shadow, followed. Their marriage came swiftly after. I wasn't present. I was staying with my older sister, Kayla, for a while. Mom didn't even share the wedding date until it was a done deal. "It was small," she told me over the phone, her voice flat, "just me and him at the courthouse." The moment I stepped through the door, a heavy, alien scent choked the air, stale cigarette smoke, cheap beer, and his cloying, musky cologne. He was sprawled on the couch, work pants grimy, a can of beer already in his hand. "Hey, kiddo," he drawled, a possessive smirk twisting his lips as if he owned the very air I breathed. "Welcome home." My smile felt like a brittle mask. I mumbled a quick greeting, my feet already carrying me toward the sanctuary of my room. That was the beginning of the slow rot. At first, it was subtle. Randy's drinking escalated, far outstripping his work ethic. Fridays brought Mom's paycheck. By Saturday, half of it had vanished. He always had a smooth lie ready, just gas money or lent it to a friend, he'll pay me back. Yet, our fridge remained bare while the trash cans rattled with fresh, empty beer bottles. His drinking wasn't just heavy, it was a secret kept in the shadows. Cans appeared under the sink, buried in the laundry, tucked behind the toilet. One day, Mom unearthed his hidden stash. A furious storm erupted. "You lied to me, Randy," she cried. His reply was a venomous hiss. "Don't start nagging, woman, you just make me want to drink more." Leia and I would huddle on my bed, her small hand trembling in mine, straining to stifle her sobs as their shouts tore through the house. The arguments often ended with a crash, a slam, a shattering sound. One terrifying night, I crept into the hallway and saw Mom standing utterly still, her hands pressed to her face. He'd hurled a beer can at her. "It just slipped," she whispered, her eyes pleading for me to believe. But it wasn't the last time his anger found a target. One desperate evening, I confronted her. "Mom, please," I begged, my voice raw. "He's destroying you. You can't keep living like this." She looked utterly drained, a ghost of herself. At the kitchen table, she clutched her mug, her gaze vacant. "You don't understand," she murmured, barely a whisper. "He needs help, then let him get help somewhere else." My voice splintered, and I hated its weakness. She flinched but wouldn't meet my eyes. Later that night, I heard Randy's sinister whisper, believing we were asleep. "You turn those girls against me again," he hissed, "and I'll walk out that door. You hear me?" But he never left. The power he held over her was a drug he couldn't abandon. Next, he began to steal from us. Mom's wallet, Leia's small piggy bank, even the few dollars I'd painstakingly saved for a phone case all vanished. When Mom finally confronted him, he swore on his dead mother's memory it wasn't him. "You probably just misplaced it, babe," he'd purr, wrapping his arms around her, his words a venomous charm. He'd whisper until her resistance crumbled and she'd melt back into his grasp. It turned my stomach. The worst night arrived when he threatened to end his life. Drunk and slurring, he lay on the bed, Mom weeping beside him. "I can't go on," he moaned, his grip like a vise on her wrist. "I can't live without you. I'll just finish it, you'll see." Mom's eyes, wide with terror, found mine. Call 911 now. Leia, only 9, stood frozen in the doorway, a silent, terrified witness. I led her to the living room as police sirens wailed closer. They took him away for evaluation, but within 2 days he was back, acting as if nothing had happened. "Hey, kiddo," he greeted us, a twisted grin on his face. "Guess I scared you all, huh?" A scream clawed at my throat, but I bit it back, turning on my heel and walking away. Soon after, he lost his job. Mom later confessed he'd threatened his boss. She murmured that it was a blessing he'd sold his gun weeks before, or who knew what horrors he might have unleashed. That chilling thought still haunts me. For a time, she finally threw him out. The house breathed a sigh of relief. Dinners became peaceful again. Leia's laughter echoed through the rooms. Mom even started to genuinely smile, a rare, beautiful sight. But one evening, I returned from a friend's house to see his truck, a monstrous shadow, back in our driveway. Mom sat on the couch, clutching a new Apple Watch box. "He said he's sorry," she whispered, her voice fragile. "He's going to change." I said nothing. There were no words left to speak. It was a fragile truce, broken within a week as his drinking began anew. This time, the arguments were a brutal symphony, louder, sharper, laced with sickening cruelty. "You're nothing without me," he'd roar, "or you'd be homeless if it weren't for me." Mom would collapse into tears, ordering him to leave, only to beg him to return days later. It was a relentless, soul-crushing cycle that shattered all of us. The ultimate betrayal arrived when she found the texts on his phone messages to a woman named Tina. He swore it meant nothing, that it was her fault for pushing him away. That night, Mom finally, definitively threw him out. We changed every lock. For the first time in years, the house felt like it could breathe, light pouring into its corners. But the quiet didn't last. Soon, the relentless barrage began. Blocked calls, ghost emails, chilling voicemails. At first, his messages were desperate pleas. * I love you. You'll regret this. You ruined my life. *, but then they twisted, growing sinister. One night, a voicemail slithered into Mom's phone, his voice a chilling whisper. "You think you're safe? You're not. None of you are." His new girlfriend, the one he'd cheated with, joined the attack. She called Mom, her voice dripping venom. "You think you can take my man? I'll slit your throat in your sleep." That was the breaking point. We called the police. Their response was a cold blade. "There's not much we can do. It's just verbal, * just verbal, * for weeks." Mom's phone vibrated relentlessly. Sometimes, late at night, we'd hear his truck rumble past, the engine a low growl that faded into the darkness. I started sleeping with a baseball bat beside my bed. Leia kept her window locked, even through the stifling summer heat. The emails finally stopped a few months ago, but every truck engine I hear outside still ties my stomach in knots. I'm 17 now. Mom pretends everything is fine, as if the nightmare is truly behind us, but I still see her flinch when her phone rings. Leia won't sleep without a nightlight anymore. Sometimes, after dark, I catch Mom staring out the window, whispering to herself, "He can't find us again." I wish I believed her, because last night, walking home from work, I saw a truck parked across the street. The exact make, the exact color. When I looked again, it was gone. But I swear I smelled that familiar mix of stale beer and smoke in the air. And this morning, there was a cigarette butt on our porch's brand. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe I'm just paranoid, but a cold certainty tells me otherwise. You don't just forget the sound of a monster's voice, and you never stop looking over your shoulder. I never thought I'd revisit that dark chapter of my life. Even now, a tremor runs through my hands just remembering it all. But perhaps, by sharing this, I can finally release the grip of what still haunts me, what he did to me. 6 years have passed since I first met Ryan Hale. I was 26 then, living in a quiet northern Ohio town called Mason Ridge. I'd just moved there, escaping a painful breakup and starting fresh with a job at a small art gallery. It wasn't much, but it paid the bills and kept me busy enough to ignore the gnawing loneliness. Ryan entered my world through something so simple, so innocent: flowers. He owned a small shop down the street called Hale's Blooms, tucked between a laundromat and a thrift store. But the scent that spilled out whenever the door opened was intoxicating: fresh lilies, jasmine, roses, a symphony of blooms. He was always there, arranging flowers with an intense focus that bordered on devotion. One afternoon, I stopped in to buy a bouquet for an art show. Ryan greeted me with an easy, warm smile. He was tall, fit, and impeccably neat, his rolled-up sleeves revealing strong, toned forearms. "Hey there," he said, offering me a single white rose. "First one's on the house." I laughed, a little flustered. "That's very sweet of you." "Nah," he replied, his gaze unwavering. "You just look like someone who truly appreciates beautiful things. Most people don't." That line lingered with me. It sounded like a compliment, but there was a strange weight behind it, as if beauty wasn't just something he admired, but something he needed. Over the next few weeks, I'd often see him around town. Sometimes he'd wave, sometimes he'd bring a small bouquet to the gallery. He started remembering tiny details about me: my favorite coffee, the color of my jacket, the earrings I wore. At first, it was flattering, so when he finally asked me out, I said yes. Our first date was flawless, almost *2*perfect. We went to a charming Italian restaurant by the river. He brought me a bouquet of tulips. "I picked these just this morning," he murmured, his eyes locking with mine. "Fresh like you," he chuckled softly, pouring me some wine. He was charming, genuinely funny, and he listened, a rare quality. When he dropped me off that night, he said something unsettling: "You really don't have to change a thing. You're already exactly what I like." At the time, I thought he meant my personality. Now, I understand it was far more sinister. We dated for about 3 months. Each time we met, he brought flowers, always perfect, never a single petal out of place. He claimed he couldn't stand wilted ones. Dead beauty, he'd call them, a strange intensity in his voice. One afternoon, I decided to stop by his shop unannounced. I found him at the counter, meticulously snipping stems, a quiet melody on his lips. My presence startled him, then his face ignited with a dazzling smile. "Well, hello there, gorgeous," he purred. "You've just brightened my whole day." He gave a soft laugh. "Don't ever worry about sneaking up on me. You're always welcome." His gaze then fell upon a cluster of carnations, and his smile vanished, replaced by a deep frown. "These simply won't do," he declared, his voice tight. Before I could even question his meaning, he brutally snapped one stem, then another, and another. The sharp, chilling crack of breaking flowers pierced the silence of the shop. "Ryan," I began, my voice hushed. "Why are you destroying them? They're just not beautiful," he mumbled, his jaw tight. "Ugliness makes me furious." He lifted his head, and for an instant the warmth in his eyes was gone, replaced by a vacant, unsettling stare. Then, just as swiftly, the kind smile returned. "But you're exquisite, so you have nothing to fear." His thumb brushed my cheek, a feather-light touch, and he whispered, "I would never break you." His words, though meant to reassure, sent a shiver of dread down my spine. His hand lingered far too long, and when he finally withdrew it, I realized the terrifying strength of his grip. Sleep was a distant dream that night. My mind replayed the scene endlessly: the abrupt change in his expression, the brutal sound of snapping stems, and the chilling promise, "I would never break you." From that day forward, his behavior grew increasingly unsettling. A missed text, even for a few minutes, would trigger a barrage of frantic messages. "Are you all right? Have I upset you? You're not cutting me off, are you?" When I finally responded, his relief was unsettling. "Good. I just can't stand it when things wither away. Flowers fade, yes, but people shouldn't." I tried to convince myself it was mere insecurity, but a deeper, colder truth gnawed at me. He was trying to cage me, to dictate my every move. One evening, I found myself back at his shop. He was alone, lifting heavy dumbbells behind the counter. He chuckled when I entered. "Don't give me that look. A man needs to stay strong for all these flower deliveries." But there was nothing amusing about it. His muscles strained, veins bulging, sweat beading on his forehead. His eyes held no humor. They were fixed, intense, almost predatory. When I mentioned my fatigue and desire to go home, his voice dropped to a quiet command. "You should really smile more often. You're so much prettier that way. Don't ever frown, all right?" I nodded, but my chest felt like it was being squeezed in a vice. That very night, I poured out my heart to my closest friends, Alicia and Ben. They hadn't met him, but I recounted every disturbing detail. Ben's voice was grim. He sounds like a total control freak. Alicia's was sharper, filled with alarm. "Honey, that's beyond controlling. That's genuinely terrifying." They were absolutely right. I knew then I had to escape, but true fear gnawed at me, so together we hatched a desperate plan. The next evening, I would confront Ryan outside his shop and sever ties. Ben and Alicia would be parked directly across the street, silent guardians, ready to intervene if anything went wrong. I just wanted a clean break, hoping to avoid involving the authorities unless absolutely necessary. My only goal was to be free. The following evening, the sky hung heavy and gray, mirroring the chill in my bones. I stood outside his shop, my phone gripped so fiercely my knuckles ached. He opened the door, a flicker of surprise in his eyes. "Hey," he greeted, "you're a bit early." I shook my head. "Can we talk out here?" His brow furrowed. "It's freezing." "Please," I whispered, my voice barely audible. He sighed, stepping outside and crossing his arms. "What's wrong?" I drew a shaky breath. "Ryan, I can't keep doing this." He blinked slowly, as if my words were a foreign language. "I'm sorry, but I think we need to break up." For 5 agonizing seconds, he just stared, his face unreadable. Then his lips twisted into a small, venomous smile. "When you speak like that," he hissed, "you become ugly." My breath hitched. What did you just say?" He tilted his head, his gaze chilling. "You were such a perfect flower. Why would you want to ruin it?" Before I could even flinch, his hand shot out like a serpent, closing around my throat. His grip was an iron vise, impossibly tight, trembling with raw fury. "Ryan, stop!" I rasped, desperately clawing at his wrists. "You're meant to stay beautiful," he snarled through clenched teeth. "I warned you not to wither." Air struggled to reach my lungs. The edges of my vision began to darken, the world blurring into a dizzying haze. Then, a distant shout pierced the fading light, someone screaming my name. Ben sprinted across the street, Alicia a blur right behind him. They slammed into Ryan, tearing his hands from my throat. I stumbled backward, gasping for air, a ragged cough tearing through me. Ben held him down, a fierce grip, while Alicia frantically dialed 911. Ryan thrashed, a guttural scream ripping from him. "Let me go. She's mine. She's my flower." By the time the sirens wailed closer and the police arrived, I was trembling so violently I couldn't even clutch my phone. Ryan was finally taken away, his rage still burning in the cold night air. The officers later revealed his dark past. 2 years prior, another woman, almost broken, had survived his rage. His wealthy family, it seemed, had buried that truth, buying him freedom with probation and hush money. But this time, justice clung to him. He was locked away for attempted murder. For endless months, sleep became a stranger. Every sudden flicker, every unexpected sound sent a jolt of terror through me. The sharp crack of a breaking flower stem twisted my stomach into knots. I sought help, and piece by agonizing piece, I began to mend. Ben and Alicia were my anchors, my saviors. I owe them everything for pulling me back from the brink. 5 years later, I dared to believe I was truly free. Then, a message from an unknown number shattered my peace. "Hey, it's Mark. Remember me? I used to work with Ryan. Thought you should know what happened." My stomach plummeted, a cold dread seizing me. Mark's words were a fresh nightmare. Ryan, set free early for good behavior, had found another victim. Her name was Elise. Mark said they'd had a violent argument one night. Elise vanished. Her worried neighbors called the police. They found Ryan calm by the bathtub. Elise lay submerged, her neck cruelly broken. He was gently pouring water over her, a chilling whisper on his lips. "I broke a flower." "I didn't mean to, I just wanted her to stay pretty." Just before the sirens, he'd called Mark, weeping. "I broke a flower again," he'd confessed. Reading those words, the world tilted beneath my feet. My therapist had warned me trauma could hit like a physical blow. That night, it tore through me. Weeks dissolved into endless nightmares. His smiling face, a bouquet in his hand, haunted my sleep, his voice a sinister lullaby. "Stay pretty." Still, the memory of that day outside his shop, the terror, the near miss, clutches at me. Without Ben and Alicia, I would have been just another statistic, another fragile bloom crushed by his twisted obsession. Even now, a florist's window can stop me cold. The sweet perfume of roses, lilies, daisies, it's all the same. I can never step inside. I just stand, trembling, until the overwhelming scent pushes me away. His first words to me echo forever. "You look like someone who appreciates beautiful things." I never understood then that for him, beauty was a thing to own, to freeze in time. If it dared to change, dared to fade, he believed he had the right to shatter it. My name is Lena Porter. This is how I survived the monster who loved beauty too much. I was only 11 when it happened, old enough to etch every terrifying detail into my mind, yet still young enough to believe the world was mostly kind. That summer, my mom had packed me off to a youth hiking program in northern Oregon. Character building, she'd called it, her gentle way of saying I spent too much time glued to video games indoors. 6 of us kids: Jenna, Luke, Tara, Chris, me, and our leader, MS Allison. Strangers just days before, we were now a motley crew, united by the shared misery of mosquito bites, stale trail mix, and endless uphill struggles. That morning, the air was crisp, carrying the sharp scent of pine needles and damp earth. We hiked a slender path deep in a forest reserve by Lake Wren, a supposed 3-mile loop. Easy, our leader promised. I actually thought it was quite pleasant, but halfway in, Jenna broke the calm. "Hey," she whispered, "I really have to pee." Luke snickered. "Just find a tree, it's nature." She shot him a look that could curdle milk. "I'm not squatting in poison ivy." I silently agreed. Just then, MS Allison pointed to a weathered wooden sign ahead. "Rest area 0, 3 mi. "Lucky you," she said, a smile playing on her lips. "There's an old restroom up there, probably from when campers used to flock here." So we veered off, following the arrow down a narrower path that snaked deeper into the woods. With every step, the forest swallowed the sounds around us. The birds fell silent, the wind died, and only the soft crunch of our shoes on decaying leaves filled the oppressive quiet. When the restroom finally appeared, a wave of revulsion hit me. It squatted on the edge of a small clearing, a squat cinder block structure, its paint flaking, choked by creeping vines. One door dangled precariously, lopsided. The entire place screamed neglect, abandoned for decades. Jenna wrinkled her nose in disgust. "You've got to be kidding me." MS Allison sighed, a weary sound. "It's better than nothing. You two go, we'll wait." I faltered, but Jenna's sharp glance spoke volumes. It's both of us or neither. That unspoken rule always hung between us, a twisted form of camaraderie. Resigned, I trailed behind her. The interior air assaulted me, thick with decay and damp earth, underlaid by a sickeningly sweet and sour stench that burned my throat. Brown streaks marred the grimy walls. Thick cobwebs draped every corner. The meager light filtering from a high, grimy window offered little comfort. Jenna gagged, "God, this place is utterly vile. Tell me about it." I forced a weak chuckle. "I'd prefer a tree any day." "Too late now," she whispered. "Just hurry." We chose adjacent stalls. My door shrieked on its hinges as I closed it. The metal was scarred with carved graffiti, names, dates, and a chilling phrase, "He's still here." I recall tracing the words, dismissing it as a morbid prank. The toilet bowl was a horror of cracks and stains. I couldn't bring myself to sit, squatting quickly, holding my breath against the foul air. Emerging, I found Jenna feigning a hand wash at the barely dripping faucet. "No water," she spat, disgusted. "This place should be torn down." I rummaged in my bag, pulling out hand sanitizer. Her face lit up. "You're a godsend." As we rubbed it in, a sudden, sharp click made us both freeze. The main door slammed shut, not a gentle drift, not the wind, but a deliberate, chilling lock. "Did you hear that?" Jenna's whisper was a fragile thread. I nodded, a slow, terrified motion. Our eyes locked in silent horror for an eternity before she stumbled to the door, yanking the handle. It was utterly stuck. She thrashed it harder, her voice rising. "Miss Allison." "Guys," we both screamed, our calls bouncing off the grimy tiles, only to be swallowed by an absolute, suffocating silence. "Maybe it's just jammed." I tried to reassure her, my voice thin. "Pull harder," she strained, her hands slipping on the cold metal. Then a choked murmur escaped her. "I'm going to be sick." She bolted back towards the stalls. I assumed it was pure panic. But the sound that followed wasn't a retch, it was a shriek, a raw, piercing scream that instantly buckled my knees. "Jenna," I yelled, scrambling to her side. She lay half inside the stall, convulsing, her hair a veil over her face. I didn't grasp the true horror until my eyes followed hers. Slumped over the toilet within the stall was a man, or what remained of him. His skin was a mottled gray, flaking as if corroded. His eyes were hollow pits, utterly gone. Ants swarmed from his open mouth. His clothes were rigid like ancient cardboard, and his limbs twisted at impossible, inhuman angles. The stench hit me a horrifying second later, and I choked back a scream. "Oh my God," Jenna whimpered, a broken litany. Every instinct screamed to flee, but my legs were rooted useless. Then the main door rattled violently. Someone, or something was attempting to force it open from the outside. Jenna's grip on my arm was a vice. Someone's out there." We retreated, pressing ourselves into the farthest, grimiest corner. My hands trembled so fiercely I fumbled my phone, dropping it as I tried to call for help. Snatching it up, I activated the flashlight. Its beams swept across the stall door, then froze. The corpse's hand had moved. I swear it had shifted. A raw scream tore from my throat as I kicked the stall door violently shut. As abruptly as it began, the frantic banging ceased. We stood, shaking, our ragged breaths the only sound in the oppressive quiet. Then, a soft click. The lock disengaged. The door creaked open, bathing the horror in sudden light. A voice, calm and deep, cut through the terror. "Sheriff's office. Anyone in here?" Without a moment's thought, we bolted past him, bursting into the clearing, gasping for air. The others stood there, a huddle of confused, terrified faces. The deputy, a middle-aged man with a thick mustache, followed us out, his eyes wide. "What in God's name is happening?" Jenna was too choked with sobs to speak. I could only point, a trembling finger aimed at the crumbling structure. "In the stall," I choked out, "there's a dead man in there." His expression shifted instantly, grim and hardened. He ordered everyone to stay put, his hand instinctively resting on his holster, before disappearing into the shadowy doorway. The silence that descended was agonizing, as if the very forest held its breath. A minute later, he reappeared, his face ashen. He spoke into his radio, words we couldn't discern, then turned to us, his voice low and strained. "You children need to return to camp now." Miss Allison tried to question him, but he offered no reply. He simply strode towards his patrol car, calling for backup. Later, she relayed the chilling news. They had found the body of a man reported missing a fortnight prior. The coroner confirmed he'd been gone for at least 10 days, but one horrifying detail clawed at my mind, refusing to let go: that restroom door. It only locked from the inside. There was no way, no logical explanation for us to have been trapped. Years later, a morbid pull drew me back. The building was gone, erased, yet the chilling echo remained. Someone had spray-painted the same 2 words on a nearby tree: "He's still here." Was it a cruel joke? A desperate warning? Even now, in the dead of night, the phantom stench of sickly sweet decay sometimes invades my senses, and I hear that faint, unsettling click of a lock. I often wonder if a part of us ever truly escaped that wretched place. I was 24 when the new terror began, old enough to recognize danger, yet still foolish enough to silence the primal screams of my own gut. Life, for a fleeting moment, felt stable, almost peaceful. My parents had just settled into a pristine suburban house, one of those gleaming, cookie-cutter constructions with immaculate lawns and driveways so spotless they almost sparkled. At first, it seemed flawless. The crisp scent of new paint, the constant, gentle hum of the air conditioning, it felt like a fresh start. Our house was the first in a short row, followed by 4 others, then nothing. Just an empty lot, a silence that felt too profound, too heavy. Beyond that, a steep, wild hill plunged into a tangle of overgrown weeds and fractured pavement, a forgotten space, waiting. Dad cherished that hill, claiming it offered a magnificent view. I saw it differently, like our home teetered precariously on the very edge of the world. A year later, the fragile piece shattered. My parents divorced. Mom departed, taking with her the very soul of the house. That left just Dad, my younger brother Josh, and me. Josh, perpetually engrossed in college or absent, and Dad, consumed by early shifts at the mechanic shop. Most nights, the house became my solitary domain. The silence grew vast, almost deafening. I could hear the refrigerator's low thrum, the faint click of the thermostat. I tried to convince myself it was tranquil, but that hollow peace was a fragile thing destined to break. Then it began, a subtle shift, barely perceptible. One night, around 2 in the morning, a thirst pulled me downstairs for water. Fearing to rouse anyone, I navigated by my phone's weak flashlight. The house was a cavern of ink, shadows devouring every corner. Halfway down, a sudden, chilling sound froze me to the spot. Not the usual creaks of an old house settling, but distinct, rapid footsteps, like someone sprinting from the kitchen, across the gleaming hardwood, and into the living room. I knew that sound. It was Josh racing across the floor, lost in his music 100 times before. Only now, Josh was fast asleep in his bed. "Dad," I whispered, my voice a ragged gasp. Silence answered. My phone's beam sliced through the oppressive dark, sweeping across the kitchen island, the empty couch, the bare floor. Nothing. Utterly, terrifyingly empty. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drum against bone. I plunged the rest of the way down the stairs, flicking on every single light switch, flooding the space with harsh, revealing brightness. The house was still, silent, nothing disturbed. I even checked the front door, the back slider, all locked, secure. I tried to dismiss it, to rationalize the ice maker, the house settling, anything mundane, anything boring. But the chilling image of someone sprinting through the dark, just out of sight, clung to me, refusing to fade. A month crawled by, then the disturbances deepened, growing bolder. I was alone that night. Dad was working late and Josh was buried in college classes. Curled in bed, lost in a stream of random videos on my laptop, I gradually noticed the profound quiet outside. No cars, no barking dogs, not even the faint thrum of the streetlight. The world seemed to hold its breath. I glanced at the clock, 6:03 p.m. The sun was bleeding across the sky, painting my walls in hues of unsettling orange. I texted Dad, "When are you coming home?" His reply landed like a cold stone, "Running late." "After 9, Josh is at Bryce's tonight, don't wait up." Home alone. Again, I clicked another video, a desperate attempt to ignore the sudden, oppressive weight in the air. That's when it struck. My bed shook, not a gentle tremor, but a violent, bone-rattling convulsion. The entire frame vibrated, the force traveling up my spine, a shockwave of terror. I scrambled off, my eyes wide with disbelief and terror. My bookshelf stood silent, my dresser unmoving. Nothing else in the room stirred, only the bed. It ceased as abruptly as it had begun. Slowly, my trembling palm pressed against the mattress, feeling for any lingering vibration. A horrifying groan erupted from beneath me, as if unseen hands had brutally yanked the mattress up and slammed it back down. "What the hell?" I gasped, the words barely a whisper. I fumbled for my phone, calling Ryan, who answered with a voice thick with sleep. "Babe, just breathe," he mumbled, half awake. "It's probably just the nearby base doing those tests you mentioned." "Ryan, it wasn't noise," I insisted, my voice trembling. It felt like someone grabbed the bed and shook it. He gave a nervous, shallow laugh. "Maybe a tiny earthquake or something?" "No." I scanned the room, the shadows seeming to deepen, to coil. It felt like it came from under the bed. A heavy silence stretched between us on the phone. "Don't you dare check," he said quickly, his voice suddenly sharp. "Just leave it. Go sleep on the couch, turn on all the lights." I wanted to argue, to demand an explanation, but the fear choked my words. I fled to the living room, sleeping on the couch with the television's mindless chatter for company until the first hint of dawn. For a while after that, the house was quiet. I even started to doubt myself, chalking it up to stress or exhaustion or an overactive imagination. Then came the morning that ripped away all pretense of sanity. It was my turn to open the coffee shop, which meant leaving the house by 5 in the morning. The sky was a suffocating, ink-eye black, pressing against the windows like a solid wall. By then, my dad had remarried, and his new wife, Laura, along with her 2 daughters, had moved in. The house now bustled with life, cars overflowing the driveway, forcing me to park in the overflow area beside the steep, wild hill. The air was frigid, my breath clouding before me. The neighborhood lay utterly silent, save for a few crickets and the distant thrum of a generator. As I walked past the empty lot, I heard it. My name, clear as a bell. It wasn't a whisper. It was calm, casual, as if someone had simply spotted me and wished to catch my attention. I froze, spinning towards the hill, my eyes straining against the darkness. Nothing but shadows and tangled weeds. My throat constricted, dry and tight. Then it came again, closer, a chilling mimicry of my father's voice, twisting his familiar tone into something utterly alien. "Lena, come here." I began to back away, my keys clutched so tightly they bit into my palm. "Dad, are you there?" No response, only the faint rustling of bushes down the slope. That's when the footsteps started, slow, deliberate, moving uphill. Terror seized me. I turned and ran. My shoes slapped a frantic rhythm against the pavement, my heart hammering so hard I could taste it. I dove into my car, slammed the locks, and flicked on the headlights. The beam cut through the dark, revealing only weeds swaying in the cold wind. But in that fleeting moment, just before I sped away, a form solidified at the hill's edge, a silhouette, man-shaped yet utterly motionless, like a statue carved from shadow. Later that day, I recounted the terrifying experience to my dad, fully expecting him to dismiss it with a laugh. But he didn't. He simply stared, his gaze distant, before finally saying, "That hill's always been strange. They tried to build another house on that lot, you know." He paused, his voice dropping. "But they stopped halfway. The foundation kept cracking, like the ground itself refused to hold. I tried desperately to push it from my mind after that, but every time I visit him, even now, I feel it, that same oppressive air. The silence isn't empty, it's watchful. He still lives there, claims he's never experienced anything out of the ordinary. But when I stay the night, I swear I still hear it. Sometimes, soft footsteps glide across the floor when everyone else is asleep. And once in a while, when I park near that hill, I can still hear it call my name, like it's patiently waiting for me to answer." I had only just moved into Ridgeway Apartments in the late fall, about 5 years ago. I was 27 then, freshly out of a long-term relationship, desperately trying to piece my life back together in a small city outside Cincinnati. The rent was manageable, the building wasn't crumbling, and my job at the auto shop provided a steady income. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine, a simple refuge. The apartment itself was unremarkable: beige carpets, paper-thin walls, a balcony overlooking the vast parking lot. My unit was on the second floor, and the one directly above me remained blessedly vacant for the first few months. I cherished that quiet. No heavy footsteps, no jarring stomps, no one flushing the toilet at 2 in the morning. All that changed around December. I remember the very first night I realized someone had moved in. I'd just returned from a late shift, heated up some ramen, and collapsed onto the couch with a cold beer. Around midnight, a dull thud echoed from above me, then another. A grating, drawn-out scrape followed, like heavy furniture being dragged across bare floorboards. "All right," I mumbled to the empty room, trying to rationalize it as mere redecorating, but the unsettling sounds continued. Thud, thud. Then a chilling, muffled scream. I froze, my beer mug halfway to my lips, every muscle tensing. That wasn't a television effect, it was a genuine, raw cry of distress. It was brief, abruptly silenced, as if a hand had brutally clamped over the speaker's mouth. I snatched the remote, silencing the TV, and strained my ears. A few agonizing seconds of quiet, then a faint, rhythmic thumping like a monstrous heartbeat pulsed through the ceiling. I tried to convince myself it was just a loud movie, a new neighbor with questionable tastes. I tried to dismiss it, but the unsettling symphony refused to cease. For several nights, the terrifying pattern repeated itself at unpredictable hours, sometimes midnight, sometimes closer to 3 in the morning. The thudding, the dragging, the choked, muffled cries. I couldn't discern if the voice belonged to a man or a woman. After a week of this torment, my patience snapped. The following night, around 1:15 a.m., with the relentless thudding sounding disturbingly like someone being violently slammed against a wall, my stomach knotted with cold dread. I pulled on a hoodie, my anger overriding my fear, and marched upstairs. I jabbed his doorbell, waited, then jabbed it again. Finally, the ominous click of a deadbolt sliding back echoed through the silence. The door groaned open, revealing a man. He seemed to be in his mid-40s, tall but with a peculiar hunch, his thin red hair slicked back as if fresh from a shower. His skin was unnaturally pale, not merely the pallor of a night shift worker, but a sickly, grayish, almost ashen hue. His eyes, a strange reddish-brown, were particularly unsettling. For a fleeting second, they seemed to burn with irritation, as if the hallway light caused him actual pain. Hey," I managed, feigning a casual tone. "Sorry to bother you, but I live directly below. I've been hearing some pretty loud banging and yelling. Is everything all right up here?" He didn't respond, merely staring with an unnerving intensity. His gaze drifted slowly from my eyes down to my throat, then to my chest. I shifted uncomfortably, clearing my throat. "Sir," he blinked, a slow, deliberate motion as if I'd just yanked him from a deep, disturbing reverie. Then, with an abruptness that made me jump, he flashed a wide, unnaturally stiff smile. "You're from downstairs," he rasped, his voice like dry leaves scraping against pavement. "Good to meet you." He leaned against the door frame, head cocked. "Noise bothering you?" "Yeah, a bit," I admitted, forcing a semblance of friendliness. "I just wanted to make sure no one was hurt or anything." He nodded slowly. "No one's hurt?" Then he stepped back into the impenetrable darkness of his apartment, adding, "Hold on a second." A cold knot of apprehension tightened in my stomach at his tone. Despite the unease, I remained rooted to the spot, a morbid curiosity warring with growing nervousness. The apartment remained unlit. I tried to peer through the narrow gap in the door, but only saw shifting shadows. A strange, metallic scent like pennies or damp iron hung heavy in the air. After perhaps 30 long seconds, he reappeared. In his hand, he held a glass, dark red liquid swirling ominously within. He extended it toward me. "Peace offering," he said, his lips stretched into that same unsettling grin. "Homemade juice." I stared at the glass, my gut churning. Thanks, but I'm good." "Try it," he insisted, his voice a quiet command. "It's rich." The word rich, spoken with such disturbing emphasis, sent a wave of nausea through me. I shook my head, a shiver running down my spine. "No, man. I appreciate it, but maybe just try to keep the noise down a bit." He remained utterly still, his eyes fixed on me, the glass still in his hand. Then, with a sickeningly wet gulp, he drank, and my skin crawled. As he lowered the glass, a single dark red drop trickled from the corner of his mouth. "Delicious," he whispered, his eyes glinting. I didn't utter another syllable. I simply turned and fled back downstairs, my heart hammering so violently I could feel its frantic beat in my ears. For a few nights, an unnerving quiet settled. Then, the whispering began. It started around 2:30 a.m., directly outside my apartment door. I'd hear a low, almost humming voice, a man's murmur like a distorted prayer. Peering through the peephole, I'd see him there, cross-legged on the floor, cradling that same glass, tilting it slowly back and forth in the dim glow of the hallway lamp. Once I slammed my fist against the door and yelled, "What in hell are you doing out there?" He merely smiled, his gaze meeting mine through the peephole. "Tasting," he replied, his voice chillingly calm. The very next morning, I called the landlord. "Look, that guy in 3B, I fumed. "Something is seriously wrong with him. He's making noise all night, then he's lurking outside my door drinking some thing. I don't even know what it is." The landlord sighed, a sound of weary dismissal. Mr. Redacted, he's different, always pays cash up front. Never had a single complaint about him before." My fear was a cold knot in my stomach. I told the landlord this man was genuinely terrifying. He swore he'd investigate, but I never saw any sign of it. A week later, the terror escalated. I was jolted awake by the violent rattling of my doorknob. It wasn't a gentle turn. It was a furious, desperate shaking, as if someone was trying to rip it from its frame. I sprang from bed, snatched the baseball bat I kept hidden, and crept silently towards the door. The rattling abruptly ceased. Then a chilling whisper slithered through the wood. "I'm thirsty." My eye pressed to the peephole, and there he was, Harlan. Barefoot, his face mere inches from the door, his heavy breathing a ghostly sound in the quiet hall. "Get away from my door now, or I'm calling the police," I snarled, my voice shaking. He tilted his head, a slow, predatory smile spreading across his face. "You smell clean tonight," he purred, his voice soft yet sinister. I didn't sleep after that. The words clung to me, a sickening chill. The next morning, I called the police. 2 officers arrived, listened to my trembling account, then ascended to his apartment. When they reappeared, one merely shrugged, a dismissive gesture. "He's odd but harmless," he said. He claims he was just trying to apologize for the noise, the officer continued, at 2 in the morning. I stared, incredulous. They gave me that weary, familiar look, the one that screamed I was wasting their time. Just call if it happens again, one mumbled, clearly annoyed. Yeah, sure, I echoed, my voice flat, knowing it was an empty promise. 2 nights later, the nightmare returned, far more terrifying than before. I was watching TV when the lights suddenly died, plunging my apartment into absolute, suffocating darkness. Seconds later, I heard it, slow, deliberate footsteps pacing above me, then a faint, chilling sound of something dripping. I snatched my flashlight, its beam dancing wildly before I fixed it on the ceiling. A horrifying sight met my eyes, a dark, wet stain spreading rapidly, something thick and viscous seeping through the drywall. I bolted upstairs, my heart a frantic drum, and pounded on his door. Harlan, open up. What in God's name are you doing? No answer. Then a low, guttural chuckle rumbled from behind the door. You really shouldn't interrupt me during dinner, he purred, his voice eerily calm. That's when the soft, unsettling humming began again, followed by a metallic clink like a tray being set down. Every fiber of my being screamed to run, to call 911, but a morbid, terrible curiosity held me captive. I had to see. The door wasn't locked. It groaned open with a chilling whisper when I pushed it. His apartment was a pit of absolute darkness, save for a single, flickering lamp on the kitchen counter. The smell hit me first, that sickening, coppery tang, now overwhelmingly potent. The walls were a horrific collage of newspaper clippings, each detailing a missing person, every single one circled in angry red ink. Then I saw him. He stood in the kitchen, his back to me, his shirt removed. His skin, almost translucent under the meager light, seemed to glow with an unearthly pallor. In one hand he held a syringe, in the other, a mason jar. Jesus Christ, I whispered, the words barely a breath. He turned slowly and my gaze fell upon the jar. It wasn't empty, it was half filled with something thick, dark, and chillingly red. I was hoping you'd come, he said, a grotesque welcome. I stumbled backward, fumbling for my phone, but he moved with terrifying speed. His fingers, like iron claws, clamped around my jaw, forcing the cold rim of the jar against my lips. Drink, he whispered, a chilling command. I gagged, twisting desperately, but his strength was inhuman. The warm, metallic, foul liquid hit my tongue. I choked, coughed, fighting to spit it out, but he clamped his hand over my mouth and nose, suffocating me until I was forced to swallow. As I swallowed, a horrible, trembling laugh convulsed his entire body. You taste better already, he rasped, his eyes burning with a terrifying glee. He shoved me to the floor, pinning my arm. A sharp, searing stab in my vein, the syringe. Let's see what's inside you, he muttered, his voice thick with dark hunger as he began to draw my blood. The plunger filled rapidly, my own blood glistening ominously under the lamp. He emptied it into his jar, swirling it like a connoisseur savors wine, then took a long, slow sip. Not bad, he whispered, his eyes distant. Not pure, but not bad. I tried to fight, but my head reeled, the room blurring into a dizzying haze. I remember him leaning close, his breath hot against my ear, whispering, "You'll do nicely. You'll get used to it. I always keep one." Then, a terrifying void. When I finally surfaced from the darkness, it was daylight. I was on my own couch, my arm throbbing, a crude bandage taped to my elbow. My phone lay dead on the floor. The apartment door was locked from the inside. On my kitchen counter, a note scrawled in red marker sat waiting. No alcohol, no fat. I'll taste you again soon. I ripped it to shreds instantly, the words burning into my mind. That night I was a statue on my couch. I couldn't eat, couldn't move. My gaze was glued to the door, waiting, dreading the slightest turn of the knob. Days dragged on in agonizing silence. Then on the 5th night, the slow, careful footsteps returned. He was back. A cold resolve settled over me. I needed a plan, and I made one. for the entire next week. I consumed nothing but greasy fried food, sickening junk, and burning whiskey. I gorged myself on greasy burgers, salty fries, and bitter beer, anything to corrupt my blood to make it repulsive. My stomach churned, but I welcomed the sickness. Then, just as I'd anticipated in the chilling quiet of 3:00 a.m., my apartment door slowly, silently creaked inward. I had deliberately left it unlatched. His ragged breath, thick with dark anticipation, was the first sound. Then his voice, a low, insidious whisper, slithered through the darkness. "Let's see if you've improved." He dropped to his knees beside my couch, the glint of his needle a cold promise, a familiar, unsettling hum vibrating from his throat. The moment the needle pierced my skin, I allowed him a few agonizing seconds to draw my tainted blood. He pulled it out, then licked the crimson tip with a grotesque relish. Instantly, his face contorted. A violent retch tore from him. "What did you do?" He rasped, clutching his churning gut. "Taco Bell," I stated, my voice a thin thread of triumph. He stumbled backward, convulsing, a torrent of sickness erupting from him. This was it, my only chance. I snatched the heavy beer bottle from the table and brought it down with savage force against his skull. He crumpled, stunned and disoriented. I lunged, tackling him to the floor, my hands already binding his wrists with thick duct tape. A low, guttural chuckle rumbled from his throat, chilling me to the bone. "You think this stops me?" he sneered. "Why me?" I screamed, my body shaking uncontrollably. "Why my blood?" He just widened his grin, his teeth stained with crimson. "I don't feast on just anyone," he rasped, his eyes burning. "Only the ones who truly feel alive, the ones who still dream." A wave of nausea threatened to overwhelm me. I seized a pair of pliers from my toolbox and brutally forced open his mouth. His front teeth, what remained of them, were blackened and jagged, utterly broken. "What in hell are you?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. He let out a raw, inhuman shriek. "Lucifer, deliver me." With a terrifying surge of impossible strength, he ripped free from the tape, lunging at me like a starved beast. I scrambled, bolting for the bathroom, slamming the door shut and twisting the lock. The pounding began instantly, a violent assault on the wood. "Father, thank thee for the feast," he chanted, his voice a chilling prayer. My trembling fingers fumbled for my phone, dialing 911. "My neighbor," I choked out, my voice splintering. "He broke in. He's trying to kill me." "Stay on the line," the dispatcher urged, her voice a lifeline. "Officers are on the way." The furious blows intensified, the door groaning, then splintering. Suddenly, the wail of sirens pierced the night. The pounding ceased. I heard a rush of heavy footsteps, sharp shouts, then the deafening crack of gunshots, followed by an absolute, terrifying silence. When the officers finally wrenched open the bathroom door, I saw him, handcuffed and bleeding from his arm. One of the cops lay slumped, his neck a gruesome mask of blood. The man Harlan just met my gaze, a chilling, knowing smile twisting his lips as they dragged him away. "You'll crave it soon, too," he whispered, his voice a soft, insidious promise. Later, the truth emerged. His name wasn't Harlan. It was Caleb Rohr. He was 83 years old. His driver's license showed a face from another era, yet in person, he had seemed no older than 45. Inside his apartment, they discovered dozens of mason jars, each filled with dark, thick blood, meticulously labeled with names and dates. He had been a phantom migrating from city to city for years. The news branded him the blood collector. I packed my life into boxes and fled that apartment the very same week. For months, the mere sight of a needle sent tremors through my hands. If a coworker so much as nicked a finger, I'd have to stumble outside, gasping for air. Once, a colleague, oblivious, joked, "Hey, you look pale, man. You sure you ain't been drained?" I clenched my fist, nearly striking him. Therapy offered a fragile lifeline. Slowly, painfully, I began to convince myself he was merely a psychopath, just a man, nothing more supernatural. But sometimes when I stir from sleep around 3:00 a.m. and hear faint footsteps above me, even in this new, distant apartment, a chilling doubt creeps in. I wonder if he's still out there, a shadow in the night. If someone else is listening to those same muffled thuds through their ceiling, desperately trying to rationalize it away, trying not to believe that someone upstairs is whispering, tasting. I was 16 that summer, a time when life in my small Ohio town felt utterly predictable, almost quaint. Everyone knew everyone else's secrets, yet no one dared speak them aloud. Our high school's grandest dramas were whispered rumors of prom hookups or hushed tales of divorce. My world felt small, contained, and undeniably safe, or so I believed. The shift began subtly online. I met a guy named Landon Price from a high school a mere 15 minutes away. Our conversations sparked on Facebook after he'd left a comment on a photo a friend had tagged me in. He wasn't my usual type at all, taller, a bit bulky, with brown hair that constantly obscured his eyes and a soft voice that hinted at shyness. Yet online, he was unexpectedly sweet, texting me good morning, asking about my day as if my answers truly mattered. After a few weeks, we decided to meet. Our first date was at the old local theater off Main Street, where the seats still groaned and the popcorn tasted vaguely of cardboard. His touch, a gentle clasp of my hand in the dark theater, sent a dizzying rush through me, that naive, breathless thrill only a 16-year-old, blind to the world's cruelties, could feel. I couldn't have known then, but that evening would mark the final moment I truly felt secure, truly myself. Just 7 days later, he arrived at our home to be introduced to my parents. Mom, bustling with a lasagna, attempted a facade of calm, but her gaze, sharp and assessing, missed nothing he did. Dad, however, remained almost completely silent, his eyes fixed on Landon from behind his beer bottle, scrutinizing him with an unnerving intensity. As Landon casually folded the hem of his jeans to settle onto the sofa, Dad's attention snagged on a stark detail. A black ankle monitor, stark against his skin, was suddenly visible. The entire atmosphere in the room shifted, growing heavy and still. Mom's fork laden with pasta halted midair, forgotten. Dad cleared his throat, his voice low and firm. "Son," he began, "care to explain that?" Landon's gaze dropped and a strained, almost pathetic chuckle escaped him. "It's, kind of silly really," he mumbled, avoiding eye contact. "Just fell in with the wrong crowd, got mixed up in something. It's nothing serious, I swear. Just house arrest for some curfew violations." He offered a dismissive smile as if to brush it off, but Dad's expression remained unconvinced. That evening, I endured a relentless lecture, a stern decree that I was forbidden from seeing him ever again. My parents declared him trouble, a dangerous influence. They even prohibited any communication, even a simple text. But at 16, brimming with defiant teenage spirit, I chose to ignore them. At that age, rebellion felt like the truest form of freedom. Thus, our secret rendezvous continued, hidden from their watchful eyes. I spun tales of library visits or harmless hangouts with friends while actually meeting Landon at his house or in secluded spots around town. The moment I first stepped into his home, a cold premonition, a sense of deep unease, settled over me. It was a small, dilapidated house slumping on a dead-end street. Its siding was scarred with peeling paint and a cigarette-burned sofa sagged on the front porch. The interior air choked with the stale scent of ancient carpet and sour, spilled beer. His mother sat in the kitchen, casually igniting a cigarette directly from the stove burner. Her eyes swept over me, a slow, appraising gaze before she drawled, "You're far too pretty for him." Then she returned to her smoke as if I were already forgotten. I forced an awkward laugh, assuming her words were a strange attempt at humor. Landon, however, showed no reaction whatsoever. He simply took my hand, guiding me to his bedroom as if this unsettling scene were perfectly normal. We spent a few more afternoons there playing video games, sharing whispers, stealing kisses, innocent, typical teenage moments until a single day ripped away all semblance of normalcy. It was a Saturday afternoon. His parents, I believed, were supposed to be absent. As we playfully messed around in his room, a flicker of movement at the edge of my vision caught my attention. The window blinds twitched, a subtle, disturbing tremor. My gaze snapped over, and through the narrow gaps in the blinds, I saw his father's face, watching. "What the hell, Landon?" I gasped, my voice thin. "Your dad is watching us." Landon sprang up, rushing to the window, but his father had already vanished into the shadows. He let out a heavy sigh, dragging his hands across his face. "Don't freak out," he muttered, his voice strained. "My dad's just weird. He likes redheads." "What do you mean he likes redheads?" I snapped, snatching my shirt from the floor, a cold dread blossoming in my gut. He simply stared at the floor, refusing to meet my eyes. "I told you he's messed up," he whispered, almost to himself. "He's done it before, just ignore him." As I made my way through the kitchen, his mother was still slumped at the counter, but this time her hand held not a cigarette but a cracked pipe. She giggled aimlessly at the television, her eyes glazed and distant, her hair a matted mess. That was the final, sickening straw for me. I walked home, my mind reeling, a fierce resolve hardening within me. This was over. The following day, I arranged to meet him in the stark, open expanse of the IMCA parking lot, intent on ending it. He appeared utterly drained, his face pale, as if sleep had been a stranger for days. When I finally uttered the words, telling him it was finished, he didn't erupt in anger. Instead, he simply began to cry, loud, wrenching sobs that shook his entire frame, drawing uncomfortable stares from passers-by. "You can't do this," he choked out, his voice thick with despair. "I need you. What are you talking about? I have cancer," he then whispered, his voice barely audible. "It's spreading," he added, his voice a broken plea. "The treatments aren't working, so you can't abandon me now. You're the only one I have left." I could only stare, utterly speechless. My 16-year-old self, utterly unprepared for such emotional manipulation, was choked by an overwhelming wave of guilt. I didn't truly believe his words, yet I lacked the courage to brand him a liar. So I offered a fragile compromise. "We can still be friends, okay?" He nodded, wiping away his tears, and managed a faint, unsettling smile that never quite touched his eyes. But from that moment, an insidious transformation began, altering everything. It started subtly, almost imperceptibly. He began appearing outside my classroom windows at school. He wasn't a student there. Apparently, he had transferred to my school a week prior, solely to be closer to me, yet he never attended a single class. He would simply stand in the hallway, a silent, unsettling figure, watching me through the window as I sat trapped at my desk. The moment the bell shrieked, I'd step into the hall and he'd materialize behind me, a silent shadow always 10 feet back. He never spoke, never touched, just walked. My friends saw it too. "Girl, that guy is pure nightmare fuel," they'd hiss. Jamie, my closest friend, gripped my arm one day, her voice a frantic whisper. "You have to tell someone?" But a cold dread had already seized me. I was terrified of what telling someone might unleash, convinced it would only twist things into something far uglier. So I buried my fear, pretending it wasn't happening. That was my first, most catastrophic mistake. A mere week later, the invasion deepened. He began riding my bus home, despite living nowhere near my stop. He'd claim a seat 2 rows behind me, a silent, unblinking sentinel, his gaze fixed on the blurred world outside. When my stop arrived, he'd disembark, a relentless shadow trailing me all the way to my driveway. He'd halt at the curb, a motionless figure, simply watching. He remained there, a chilling statue, until my parents' car finally appeared, then he'd melt away. Every single day, the same terrifying ritual. I desperately tried to whisper reassurances to myself asterisk, he's just sorry, he's showing he cares asterisk, but a cold, hard truth resonated in my bones. This was not care. This was possession. One evening, a surge of desperate courage propelled me to confront him. I spun around mid-walk, my voice shaking but firm. Landon, seriously, asterisk stop asterisk, leave me alone, this is not normal. His reply was a chilling, flat smile devoid of all warmth. You'll change your mind, he rasped, his eyes utterly dead. You always do. After that, the quiet stalking transformed into a relentless auditory assault. The calls began, a trickle at first, then a torrential flood. One or two a night escalated to dozens, then hundreds. I'd answer only to be met by a suffocating silence. Other times, a faint, unsettling whisper would coil through the line. Then came the songs, his guitar strumming eerie, self-penned love songs, twisted ballads about asterisk me asterisk. And sometimes, horrifyingly, he'd just asterisk scream asterisk. Not words, just raw, animalistic roars that tore through the phone until I slammed it down. I blocked his number, but a new one would instantly appear. I blocked that and another. Each night my phone would shriek with over 100 missed calls, a terrifying symphony of his obsession, half sickeningly sweet, half utterly violent. Then came the night that ripped away any illusion of safety. I arrived home to find a stuffed snowman, one of those motion-activated Christmas decorations, propped on my porch. But this wasn't festive. A kitchen knife was plunged grotesquely through its head, and the entire thing was slick with a strange, clear gel. I leaned closer, a wave of nausea washing over me as the familiar scent hit me, his deodorant, the very one I'd once foolishly said I liked. The small speaker meant for cheerful carols had been replaced. When I pressed the hand, instead of a jolly, Frosty the Snowman, his voice, distorted and chilling, filled the air. You're mine forever, Riley. You'll never get away. A raw, primal scream tore from my throat, so loud it dragged my dad outside, convinced I was under attack. In that moment, the last vestiges of normalcy shattered, and everything spiraled into a nightmare beyond my control. My mom's frantic call finally dragged the school into the nightmare. They suspended him for harassment, officially banning him from campus, but it was a useless gesture. He merely shifted his hunting ground. Every morning he was there at my bus stop, a silent, menacing sentinel across the street. He shadowed me all the way home, an inescapable presence like a part of my own terror. Then, one afternoon, the invisible threat became brutally physical. I was walking home, earbuds in, desperately trying to pretend his presence behind me didn't exist. Suddenly, the pavement vibrated with running footsteps. I spun around just as he slammed into me. For a terrifying second, I braced for an attack, but then his arms coiled around me. It wasn't a hug, it was a crushing, suffocating vise that stole my breath. "Let me go," I shrieked, fighting for air, but he just whispered, "I missed you," and tightened his grip even more. A sickening asterisk pop asterisk echoed in my chest, and a searing pain shot through my side. When he finally released me, I crumpled to my knees, gasping, the world spinning. He began to sob, babbling frantic apologies before bolting into the thick woods behind my street. That night, the ER confirmed a cracked rib. My dad called the police, but without clear proof of his intent to harm. Their hands were tied. They simply told us to document every single incident. So we did. Then arrived the night forever etched into my soul. Around 3 in the morning, I jolted awake. No sound, no nightmare, just an icy prickle on my skin, that primal, ancient feeling that someone, somewhere, was watching. I crept downstairs for a glass of water, desperate to shake off the oppressive unease. The kitchen light gleamed on the fridge's stainless steel, and in its polished surface I saw it, a flicker of movement, something outside the sliding glass door. My breath hitched. I turned with agonizing slowness, and there he was, Landon. Standing utterly still in my dark backyard, his eyes fixed on me through the glass, wide and unblinking, his face eerily illuminated by the porch light. A raw, piercing scream tore from my lungs. The glass slipped from my numb fingers, exploding into 1,000 shards at my feet. By the time my dad, roused by my terror, snatched his gun and burst outside, Landon had vanished into the shadows. The police arrived, their flashlights cutting through the dark, revealing clear footprints in the wet grass leading directly to the spot beneath my bedroom window. He had been there, watching me sleep. That was the final breaking point. We secured a restraining order, and my dad filed a detailed report with every single local department, desperate to build an iron wall against the monster who refused to let go. Landon vanished from school shortly after. A fragile quiet settled, a deceptive calm, but every few months a new friend request would surface a ghost in my inbox. No picture, no history, just those same 5 chilling words. "Hey, it's me, can we talk?" I'd block it always, but it was a hydra's head, another would sprout. Years have bled into the past, and I have no idea where he lurks or what twisted path he walks. Yet sometimes in the dead of night, I wake from a dreamless sleep, an unseen hand yanking me awake. My gaze snaps to the window, and every single time a cold dread clutches me, half expecting to see his face, a silent, unblinking specter staring back from the darkness. The memory of meeting Nate remains vivid, a stark marker in my mind. It was the autumn of 2003, my sophomore year at Hollow Creek University, a modest public college lost somewhere between the vast, flat plains of East Texas and absolute desolation. I was a journalism major then, barely treading water, a part-time gig at the campus library, ramen noodles for every meal, and a beat-up truck that only sputtered to life on its 3rd desperate attempt. It was one of those thick, muggy September afternoons, the air so heavy it felt like breathing warm broth. I sat beneath a gaunt, skeletal oak, half-heartedly sifting through a printout for my media ethics class, when a guy simply materialized beside me, dropping down as if we were old confidantes. "Damn, dude, you look like you're cramming for the bar exam," he drawled, a lazy, unsettling grin spreading across his face. I squinted up from my notes, battling the sun and the sheer exhaustion of just trying to survive midterms. He nodded, then brazenly lit a cigarette right there in the shade, exhaling a plume of smoke. He possessed a kind of effortless, reckless charm, sun-kissed skin, a chiseled jawline, and dark hair that looked like it hadn't known a brush in weeks. His t-shirt, faded and worn, proudly declared the Doors' 1969 tour. "I'm Nate," he announced, flicking ash from his knee. "Illy," I replied. He extended a hand, gripping mine with a firm shake as if sealing some unspoken pact. "Good to meet you, Illy," and just like that it began. A chance meeting that at the time felt utterly benign. If anyone had dared to whisper then that Nate would morph into one of the most profoundly disturbing individuals I would ever encounter, I would have scoffed, dismissing it as a cruel joke. Back then, he was simply that amusing, wild card, utterly unconcerned with the world's opinions. He lived just down the hall from me in our dorm, a constant, boisterous presence. He was always the loudest voice, dominating every room with his wild stories, sharp jokes, and relentless teasing, a skill that, inexplicably, never earned him a punch in the face. He was a maestro of laughter. But beneath the jovial exterior, something else simmered, a strange, piercing intensity in his eyes, as if he were perpetually measuring you, dissecting you, calculating some unknown equation. Initially, I shrugged it off. College dorms were a carnival of eccentricities, but the more time I spent in Nate's orbit, the more acutely I felt the unsettling current of his difference. One evening, a group of us were gathered in the dorm lounge, playing cards, when someone idly joked about surviving a zombie apocalypse. Nate leaned back, a chilling smirk playing on his lips. Illy here, he announced, would probably try to negotiate with the zombies. Everyone chuckled. Me, though, I'd make it simple. You just have to not care who you kill. He uttered those words as if discussing the weather, utterly devoid of emotion. But the way his eyes locked onto mine when he said it, dead serious, as if probing my very soul for a reaction, sent a sliver of ice down my spine. Dude, I forced a laugh. You're genuinely unsettling everyone. He merely grinned. Just being realistic, man. Sometimes you have to be utterly cold to survive. The others shrugged it off, returning to their game. But I couldn't dislodge the weight of his words. For him, it wasn't a joke at all. Nate developed a habit of uninvited intrusions. He'd materialize at my door at 2 in the morning, a case of beer in hand, declaring, couldn't sleep. Figured you couldn't either. He'd sprawl on my couch for hours, dissecting the world, his family, and his unsettling theories about humanity being fundamentally broken. My old man's a real piece of work, he'd confide, his voice flat. Thinks he can just buy my respect. Money, cars, guilt, whatever's easiest. I told him once he'd be worth more to me dead. He didn't even blink as he said it. He laughed, a hollow, mirthless sound, devoid of any genuine amusement. Sometimes he'd shift gears entirely, transforming into the magnetic, charming guy everyone craved. He could sweet-talk professors into extensions, coax girls into study sessions that were anything but, and even persuade campus security to turn a blind eye to wild parties. Despite my fondness, a persistent unease always clung to me when he was near. That winter, the shadows began to deepen. One frigid night, we huddled on the dorm steps, sharing a plastic bottle of harsh whiskey. The campus lay hushed in the early hours, only the distant thrum of vending machines and a lonely dog's bark disturbing the profound quiet. Illy, Nate's voice, unsettlingly placid, cut through the stillness. What price would tempt you to take a life? I chuckled, dismissing it as another one of his twisted hypotheticals. Depends, I replied. A villain. A stranger, just a person, he clarified. Someone you don't know. Imagine they deserve it, but the specifics are hidden from you. I laughed, a nervous sound. Honestly. A couple of million, perhaps. His gaze was utterly flat. Far too high, he stated, devoid of humor. It's cold-blooded murder, Illy. You think I'd do that for mere pocket change? He settled back against the wall, his breath pluming like ghostly smoke in the frigid air. You wouldn't end a life for 50,000. Jesus, Nate, I half-laughed. What kind of sick question is that? He merely shrugged, just wondering. Everyone has their price. The talk faded, but his words coiled in my gut like a snake. This wasn't idle curiosity. It was the chilling tone of a man who had meticulously pondered, perhaps even plotted, such an act. By spring, Nate had vanished from classes. He was off campus, he claimed, shacked up with an older woman who didn't mind anything. Our contact dwindled to sporadic late-night texts, his messages laced with unsettling philosophy. Don't people just reap what they sow? Sometimes it's not murder, but justice. Then, without a word, he was gone, a phantom, dropped out, vanished back to his dusty hometown near Amarillo. I shrugged it off as typical Nate. He'd disappear, then reappear, probably on some bizarre television spectacle. Life rolled on. 2 years later, I graduated, landed a writing gig for a small Dallas paper, and eventually his memory faded. Until an unknown number flashed across my phone one afternoon. Illy, man, it's been a lifetime. The voice, familiar yet coarser, older, was undeniably Nate. Nate, holy hell, man. Where have you been? Everywhere, he chuckled. Listen, he continued, I'm heading your way soon. We should grab a drink. Sure, I replied, a flicker of apprehension. What brings you to town? Business, of a sort, family matters, but a hefty sum is coming my way. Thinking of something grand, maybe Mexico, party like the good old days. I laughed, assuming his usual bravado. "That'll be the day you'll see," he promised, a low chuckle rumbling, devoid of humor. "You'll see very soon." We exchanged a few more pleasantries, then he abruptly hung up. I dismissed it, pushing the strange call from my mind. 2 weeks later, scrolling through the news, a headline snagged my attention: 3 dead in West Texas home invasion. Lone survivor clings to life. The accompanying images showed a chillingly familiar ranch house, crisscrossed with police tape, bathed in the frantic pulse of emergency lights. Then, a photo of Nate, gaunt, pale, his arm a bandaged sling. The report detailed how he'd been shot during a brutal home invasion that claimed the lives of his parents and younger sister. He was the sole one left standing. I sat frozen, staring at the glowing screen for what felt like an eternity. My first reaction wasn't sorrow, but a profound, sickening disbelief. Nate had always spoken of his parents as adversaries, but I never imagined he meant it in such a horrifyingly literal sense. For weeks, I tried to reach him, sending unanswered messages. I assumed he was lost in the crushing depths of grief, and who could fault him? Yet the official narrative felt wrong. Police reported no forced entry. The supposed intruder was found dead. Too many details simply didn't align. Then came the final, gut-wrenching revelation, a truth that still haunts me. 6 months later, Dylan, my old college roommate, messaged me out of the blue. "Dude," he typed, "you have to see this." He sent a link: man accused of hiring accomplice for family murder. The accompanying photo was Nate. The article laid bare the horror. Investigators had unearthed messages between Nate and the intruder, a chilling exchange detailing payments, meticulous planning, and even how Nate would stage his own injury to sell the lie. He had offered the man $50,000 to slaughter his own family. He had guided him straight to their door. He'd meticulously timed it, ensuring he'd be hurt but live. Yet the twisted scheme unraveled when his accomplice faltered. Nate, consumed by a sudden terror, plunged them into a brutal gunfight, a chaotic exchange that instantly claimed his own sister's life. His father, clinging to life by a thread, bravely unburdened himself to the authorities, revealing every horrifying detail. A suffocating dread seized me as I read. Every late-night conversation, every chilling joke about taking a life for cash, it wasn't just idle talk. It had been a monstrous blueprint all along, meticulously crafted in his dark mind. I attended the trial. The reasons were tangled: a desperate need for answers, perhaps a morbid curiosity to see if his gaze would ever meet mine, to gauge if I'd ever held any significance in his warped world. He appeared gaunt, aged beyond his years. His hair was shorn close, his face a chilling, blank mask. As the horrific charges echoed through the courtroom: conspiracy, capital murder, attempted murder, he remained utterly still, not a single muscle twitching. But then his father took the stand, and time itself seemed to halt. The old man was a ghost, trembling violently, his voice a fragile tremor as he recounted the terrifying dawn, the burst of gunfire, and the shattering realization that his own son was the orchestrator of such horror. When the prosecutor asked if he wished for the ultimate punishment, Nate's father, his voice thick with agony, simply said, "No. I want him to endure, to truly live with the weight of his monstrous deeds." Nate met his father's broken gaze, his own eyes devoid of any flicker of feeling. Sitting there, a sickening truth crashed over me. I had called this man a friend. We had broken bread, shared laughter, whispered secrets, and I had foolishly placed my trust in him. All that time, he had been honing his craft, meticulously testing the boundaries of human perception, seeing just how far he could push before his true nature was exposed. Years have passed, yet sometimes the nightmare returns. I'm back on those cold dorm steps, the shared whiskey, the silent stars, and his voice, a chilling whisper in the dark. How much would it take, Ellie, to extinguish a life? I never knew then that I was speaking to a man who had already settled on his price, a man whose soul was already forfeit. Every thought of him drags me back to a late-night text, words I'd once dismissed as dark, adolescent bravado. People like me don't get trapped. We just grow weary. He was wrong about one terrible thing. He was caught. Yet a chilling question gnaws at me: how many more like him walk among us? Smiling, laughing, patiently biding their time, waiting for the perfect moment to shatter worlds. And sometimes, when my own reflection stares back from the dark glass late at night, his voice echoes, calm and glacial, in the deepest corners of my mind. Everyone has their breaking point, Ali.